Welcome back to Tough Men of Faith. RT, how you doing?
Doing good, Nick. Glad to
Good.
be here.
Yeah, me too. This has been a lot of fun doing these interviews here lately.
Yeah, I've heard that people enjoy the interviews more because they hear less of us.
Yeah, I've actually heard
Is
that
that
too.
is that it?
I think producer Blake has a easier time editing too.
Yeah.
When he hears less of me, I think it's a little easier.
Let's jump into it. I'm excited
Ready?
about today's podcast. Our guest is Wendell Chin, and we've spoke a couple of times. Three times we've met. And I don't know, Nick. Sometimes that when you're around someone and you can just not over spiritualize this, but you can just sense that they're a man of God.
Yeah.
Like that they walk with God. Just their demeanor, their wisdom, their discernment in very short conversations I've had.
Yeah, just
with
the
our
way they
guests.
carry themselves.
Yeah, I've always felt that, and I've had you on my list for a while. I was like, I just want to sit down and get coffee with you sometime, or grab lunch, or just to kind of hear your story and talk through some things. And I know you have a lot of wisdom and you have an interesting experience. And I thought, when I was thinking through that, I was actually going to reach out to you. It's like, why not just sit down on the podcast and let some of our guests kind of hear that? And so,
That sounds good.
yeah, welcome here to the podcast.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You just got to watch out for Nick. Now, sometimes you'll be talking and he has great jokes.
Sometimes I have one-liners.
So.
Sometimes it's in the middle of a church sermon. Sometimes it's just here in the podcast studio, and I've been trying to control myself.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be slower to speak. It hasn't gone as great as it could have.
We've been going through James as the church here, and slow
all
to
right.
speak, is in there. And so
Quick to listen.
quick to listen.
Yeah.
Yep. So a lot of us have been trying to
And
learn
slow
that.
to wrath.
It's like, yes.
And I need to be better at all three of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. So what the question we like to ask to kind of start things off, we know we'll go a lot of different directions, is how did you get to where you're at now in life? From when you were born to where you're at now? What does that story look like? And how did you see God moving through it? And how you came to Christ? And so we'll just kind of start with that if you're okay with it.
Well, yes, I am from South Texas, and those on the podcast can probably pick up on my southern accent. And the best way I can say that in answering is I'm doing a book on reflections, and I am reflecting on where I came from to where I am now with regards to the Lord. I grew up in the South. I grew up in segregation. And halfway through my high school life, I was very angry, very frustrated with regards to the conditions that I was exposed to.
What year did you graduate from high school? This we kind of
In 68,
68. Okay, yeah. So rough time in the country.
yes, I graduated in 68. I went to college, Prairie View A&M College, a historically black college and university, HBPC as we say, and graduated from there in 72. But leading up to there, I was exposed to a lot of segregation, a lot of prejudice, and I didn't like white people. Not at all.
And look at you now. You're in a room with four of them.
Well,
Three of them.
Well, I must say also, I've been pastoring a church for the podcast listeners, I've been pastoring a church about 65 miles south of Indianapolis called Seymour, Indiana.
Okay.
And it is 24,000 whites, Caucasian, and only about 30 to 60 African Americans in the whole city.
Okay.
So to answer your question or to respond to your comment, it's not just a matter of being in a room with all white folks, but
I was just kidding about
yeah.
that.
No.
And RT called me today. He said, "Hey man,
I'm a very candid person."
He said, I need you to be easy on the jokes today. He said, just 'cause we don't know how Wendell's going to
Well,
take
you said you do one-liners. So.
Yeah, that's my problem. I need to
No,
be slower to speak, remember?
But my life journey with regards to Christ was such that the Lord was pulling me in. He's pulling me in with His love. He's pulling me in with His grace and His mercy. He's pulling me in with regards to salvation. And when I was in high school, I had a lot of challenges. I graduated with no problem. I graduated from college with no problem. I chose my college institution based upon, again, not wanting to be around white people. So I went to a historically black university and graduated with honors. But while I was there, I had a very positive interaction with whites from the standpoint of I was a midshipman, and there were very few black midshipmen when I was coming through college, and so my exposure to, I would say, Caucasians, my exposure to Caucasians evolved basically because I was starting to interact with people who were from all midshipmen from all walks of life and all parts of the country. And so there was not a prejudicial view of accepting me. And
what's a midshipman?
a midshipman is a Navy student, naval student, or Marine student in college.
Okay.
And you can have that designation based upon your desire to go to either the Navy or the Marine Corps.
Okay.
After 4 years of college.
Okay.
And I chose I chose the Marines.
I never thought we'd have a Marine on this show.
Right?
Man, a little disappointed in
All
myself.
the Army guys that have been on here.
I like being the first.
Yeah. So this is like ROTC.
It was ROTC.
In college.
It was
Okay.
ROTC.
Yeah.
And my exposure was broadened. And like I said, the Lord was pulling me in as a go-getter alpha male to a mild-mannered Christian. And a lot of individuals say, I found the Lord. I found the Lord even though he was not looking for me. I was looking for him. Halfway through the Marine Corps career, I stayed in for about 10 years. So halfway through my Marine Corps career, it's interesting. The paradox is very interesting. I was saved in a church in little country church in Jacksonville, North Carolina. And guess what? It was predominantly white. and I found the Lord has a interesting sense of humor. One of the things that when I was coming into, I would say, salvation was the Lord told me I have to love everybody. And initially it was a challenge for me, but as I progress, as I reflect, as I progress through my life journey, I have learned to love everybody. I've learned to turn the other cheek. The saying used to be, what would Jesus do? The little initials, what would Jesus do? Well, I take that to heart with regards to my response to individuals that I come in contact with. Black or white or brown or whatever. I've done a lot of international travel, both when I was in the Marine Corps and since I've been saved. And so my mantra is I want to make a difference in the lives of people that I come in contact with. I want to make a difference in the lives of the men that I come in contact with. So I do workshops for men and leadership. Most of the time it's men because of our male chauvinist society in the church, but I do leadership and seminars a lot to men, and I have found that I have a big bag to glean from. I have a big bag of experiences to explain that. I have a large bag of experiences that I can utilize in trying to make a difference in the lives of people that I come in contact with.
Yes. What'd you major in college?
I have 2 degrees.
Okay.
And my bachelor's was in social science.
Okay.
From Prairie View, as I said, and my master's was in social work from Indiana University.
Okay. So when you came out of your undergrad, did you go straight into active duty Marines
I went
after that?
straight to active duty.
So that would have been 72, 73?
72.
So
72.
Vietnam War still going on?
Vietnam
right?
War was still going on. I was trying to get to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
I went in as an officer, as a second lieutenant, and those on the podcast, if you've heard the name Captain Ollie North or Colonel Ollie North, Captain Ollie North was one of my instructors when I was a second lieutenant in the Marine
Really?
Corps. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool now. It's almost 50 years later.
That
but
is really cool.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
He was someone that I really admired and still hold in high esteem.
Mm-hmm.
In high esteem.
Yeah. And I think I was doing some reading about some of your education experience and things. You graduated top of your class.
Mm-hmm.
They issued you a sword.
Oh, that's an interesting, interesting development in my life.
Yeah.
I got a call it was 2019. I got a call about 4 years or so ago, and they said, "Is this Captain Chin?" And I said, "Yes." And then they said, "Did you graduate from Prairie View as the top of your class?" And I said, "Who is this?"
We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty.
Out of the clear blue sky, somebody's asking me that. Mm-hmm. And I said, yes. And they said, "Do you still own your Mameluke sword?" That's Marine Corps officer sword. It's called a Mameluke sword from the Barbary pirates. But I'm not going to go. I love history. My daddy was a history teacher, so I love history. But I said yes. And they identified themselves and said they were from the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., the African American Museum of History and Culture, which had just been opened up about 5 years ago. And they said, we want to put your artifact, your sword, in the Smithsonian Institute. And I said, you can't. No, before I got saved, I wouldn't say that. But I said, you got to be kidding me. And they were not. And the rest is history. They said, you are a living legend, because most of the individuals who have their artifacts in the Smithsonian Institute are dead.
Gotcha.
And you are a living legend with regards to having that done. So they invited my wife and I, and my brothers went to Washington, D.C., to the African American Museum of History and Culture, and they had a huge gala. And I didn't know it was going to be quite like that. Seriously. And there was 400, 500 people there.
Oh, wow.
They closed down the African American Museum of History and Culture for that evening. And it was.
So, is there a story behind the sword as to why they wanted it? Other than you being the legend?
Yes. Vietnam is going on.
Yep.
I wanted to go to the Marine Corps as a second lieutenant, and my parents did not have, with regards to graduation from, as you said, ROTC, my parents did not have all of the funds for a complete uniform. Okay. When you graduate, you have to have not just your sword, but you have to have the complete uniform for graduation. And at that time, they were awarding, I guess is a better word, they were awarding a sword to the top midshipman, the top person in their class.
Okay.
And at the time, we didn't know it, but years later, at the time, our class was the first 4-year graduating class of black midshipmen in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And I was the top midshipman.
Yeah, you were the top guy.
I was the top guy. Remember, I said I was the alpha male. So
Yeah.
I was something else. But that's.
So you're making history and didn't even know it.
I didn't even know it.
Right, that you're the top of your class, the first class to do this.
I didn't even know it. I was just trying to get to Vietnam.
Yeah.
I lost a friend of mine. I don't want to get teary on y'all, but I lost a friend of mine. In Vietnam, and he got killed, and so I wanted to go to Vietnam and make up for his loss.
Yeah, avenge his death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and
it wasn't God's plan.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because back then, like, most people are having to be drafted to go to Vietnam, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're opposite of that. It's like, I want to be a officer. I want to be in charge. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get there as soon as I can. Yeah.
And that was my intent, but it was something else. Now, with regards to college, I graduated to top midshipman, but also was the president of Student Government Association, Student Body Association. Mm-hmm. And so I had the military on one side and civilians, the students, on the other side.
Who didn't like the military at that time.
Who did not like
the college students, yeah.
They were removing ROTC units off of colleges and universities when I was in school. and I was in school at the university for 4 years. My last year, I was a top midshipman. I was battalion commander of the ROTC unit, and I was also the student government president. And we were, as students, we were in a constant turmoil. Out of the 4 years that I went to Prairie View, the first 3 years there was a riot, a literal riot. First 3 years. The year that I was student government president, there was no riot. The year after I left, guess what? There was a riot. And what I did was get the students involved in politics. I was at the time, and I underline that, but I was at the time a young Democrat and in the Young Democrat Party. And the state of Texas passed a law that said that students at colleges and universities could vote either where they went to college or the university or their home of residence. And so I saw an opportunity to get
other people
a
involved.
lot of people involved.
Yeah.
And I devoted a lot of time and a lot of effort my senior year, not just to the ROTC unit, but to the student government side, to get people involved in, not necessarily Republicans or Democrats, it didn't matter, just get them politically involved. It was semi-successful.
Yeah, so kind of bring this back around to the sword. So if we go to the Smithsonian now, is that still on, your sword still on display?
It's there. I had to sign, I had to give it away.
I was wondering how that works. So you give it to, you sign it over to them.
You sign it over
Yeah.
to the Smithsonian, sign it over to the Institute, and you no longer have possession of it. So they did the ceremony, and they passed the sword from person to person. I have friends who are admirals. I have friends who are black admirals, black generals, and all of those guys, and some ladies were there. And they had a line, and they just passed the sword from one end to the end where the curator for the Smithsonian Institute, African American Museum of History and Culture, was at that end, and then they gave it to her. We gave it to her, and then I had to say, "Hasta la vista, baby."
Yeah. That had to be so moving, though, to see this sword that you earned as a second lieutenant to be passed through admirals.
Yeah.
And then be put in the museum there.
That's pretty cool.
And that museum, have you been there, Nick?
I haven't.
Man, I've been to all the Smithsonians there. That one it's incredible.
Really?
It's moving. It's just incredible.
Yeah. Have you been to the African American Museum?
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
I've been to that one.
Yes.
And I took my kids after I went to it. I made sure to take my kids back to it.
Yes.
Just the stories it tells.
Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah. It
Yes.
is so good.
It is.
That's awesome. I need to do a DC trip.
Yeah. When you do it, you got it. When I went to it the first time, like you said, it's only been open a few years, and I think you had to get tickets or something. It was tough to get into back then.
It's very, for me, on my
you're
night,
a celebrity. You just walk in,
on
right?
my night, I couldn't just walk in. On my night, I had to have X number of tickets too. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. So okay. So you go in the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
What does your Marine career look like?
Oh, pretty typical. I did overseas tour of duty and stateside tour of duty. Overseas, I second lieutenant, took the training of Captain Ollie North with me, but we did Okinawa, the Philippines, Taiwan. Came back from overseas in '74, the latter part of '74, and did a Marine barracks. So I was a senior guard officer at a Marine barracks, special weapons.
That'd be a tough job.
Yeah.
Marines like to get in trouble.
Yeah. Well, you don't get in trouble at a Marine barracks. If you do, you don't stay there that long. Seriously.
Yeah.
But I did that, and
What special weapons entail? Can't talk about it.
I will just say special weapons.
All right.
I'll just say special weapons. You have to sign.
Yeah, no.
You have to sign a thing. So I'll just say special weapons.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
So you spent how many years total in the Marines?
9 years and 9 months.
Okay. And then when you got a Marines, is that when you went and got your master's? And
No, I got saved, and like I said, I found the Lord, I was looking for him and didn't know I was looking for him. But in North Carolina, Jacksonville, North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, and my wife died. We moved here in June of 81, and she died the middle of July of 81, and I was left with 2 adopted daughters and 1 natural son, 3 kids, single parent.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And here in Indianapolis, I didn't know anybody because I just gotten out of the Marine Corps. And didn't know anybody. I did not have my master's, and I put in for the Juvenile Detention Center here in Indianapolis.
Okay.
At the time, it was one of the largest juvenile detention centers in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And I put in for that as director of child care. Subsequently, I got that position, and with that position, it required having a master's, and so I went back to school, and that's when I got my master's from IU. I was in the 3-year program, and I got it in 2 years, and I graduated with honors with 3 kids.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's a lot of crock pots. I had 3 crock pots going, and I was a latchkey dad, and that's a whole. We don't even have time to deal with that. A lot of tears.
Yeah.
A lot of tears. I prayed a lot of time, and the Marine in me. Remember, John the Baptist. He said basically, I must decrease so he can increase.
Yep.
And that's what. And I'm still learning, but that's what I had to learn to do.
Yeah.
You know, I had to be a mother and a father to my children, and that was a very trying time. But the kids were not disruptive in it. Kids are disruptive. My kids are disruptive, but they were not disruptive. Me being a director of child care at the juvenile center, I didn't have them in the juvenile center. But I was able to graduate, and I became a certified marriage and family therapist and a clinical social worker, and that's what I did. I've been retired 13 years.
Okay.
As a clinical social worker and a marriage and family therapist, certified marriage and family therapist.
I think we're going to wrap up this episode right here, and then come back and kind of pick up where we left off right there and get some practical advice for men. And I've got a couple other questions for you, if that's all right.
All right.
All right. So thanks for joining us on Tough Men of Faith.
Yep. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.